Welcome to this edition of the VC Notes Coffee Talk style. I am so pleased today to have a special friend and guest with us. It's an individual that I've had the privilege of knowing and working with for a number of years. And today we've got Dr. Daryl Kirch with us. He is President and CEO Emeritus of the Association of American Medical Colleges. We frequently call it the AAMC. He served in that role for 13 years. And it was during his time in that position that I, as well as a number of other folks here at the Medical Center, came to know him and really came to appreciate his leadership and his leadership style and what he has done for academic medicine across the country. I would say in that 13-year period, you really have made us better and stronger and influenced leaders all across the country in academic medicine. In his past history, and I'm going to ask him just to give us a little bit of an overview of how he got to that position and the different roles he had. But when you think about the range of jobs in academic medicine, he really has done it all. So thank you for being with us today, Dr. Kirch. I'm so glad to have you here. We're very honored. This is, in fact, his third visit to the Medical Center. He's been here before to speak to different groups and to visit with us. So give us just a little bit of the background. You're from Colorado. How did you go from where you started as an undergraduate to leading the AAMC?
You know, it's so interesting in terms of the journeys we take to get where we eventually end up in our professional lives. I wasn't even sure I wanted to go to medical school. Through a series of life circumstances, decided I'd give it a try, but I was very uncertain of it. Loved medicine, loved the idea of what it could offer to patients. Chose psychiatry because at the time, actually, psychiatry was rediscovering the brain. That there were complex biological processes that could lead a person to become depressed, to have an anxiety disorder, or to have one of the more severe mental illnesses like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. At that time, we didn't have much in the way of treatments, but it was exciting because we were beginning to unravel the mysteries of the brain. So I specialized in psychiatry, and then a mentor who had gone to the National Institutes of Health, NIH, as a researcher, convinced me I might do that. Went off to Bethesda, Maryland to work in research. My 2-year fellowship lasted 13 years as I was offered more and more opportunities at NIH. And then out of the blue, was asked by a colleague, actually a researcher with whom I'd worked, if I would be interested in throwing my hat in the ring to be the dean at the Medical College of Georgia, which, like the University of Mississippi, is the main academic health center for the state of Georgia. That was a wonderful experience. I worked with a terrific team of people, was there 7 years, took on responsibility for the health system, which I hadn't expected to do, and then had that same kind of role at Penn State University for 6 years, leading the health system and the medical school, and was honored when my colleagues encouraged me to consider becoming the president and CEO of the AAMC, where I would have a chance to work with all the med schools and teaching hospitals in the country. That's how I came to know Mississippi so well and what the University Medical Center is doing here. I believe I'm the only person who may have visited every medical school in the United States at least once.
That's an impressive feat.
I have seen them all, and I've seen what a great job they do, which is what has always impressed me with every visit here. I see more clearly how you're engaged with your community, your state, and beyond, doing great things. So it's wonderful to be back and to have a chance to talk with a dear friend and colleague.
Well, thank you. You know, the academic medical centers all across the country really are so different, depending on where they are and the role they serve in their city or their state. Are they the only one? Are they one of several? And they have different structures, but at the core, they share those same missions. And I think that is the way across the country that we connect, is at least on those shared missions. We might look different and have different roles, but at the end of the day, you know, we're teaching students, medical students, and very often many other health profession students, the science, the scientific discovery that's working, and then the patient care delivery. So it is always fascinating to me when I visit with and talk to my colleagues around the country. No two story, you know, there's that phrase I've heard many times: if you've seen one academic medical center, you've seen one academic medical center. But yet there are those common threads that I think bring us together in so many ways.
You know, in that vein, I heard the expression once that I think is so true, that for academic medical centers, when things are at their worst, when there is a mass casualty event, when there is a pandemic, when things are at their worst, we're at our best. And you really see, I'm sure this happened here at UMMC, that during COVID, you stepped up.
Absolutely.
To help lead your state through this terrible event that hopefully now is more in the rearview mirror, but will probably be with us in some form for the rest of all our lives.
It's certainly a life-changing experience for sure.
But it's that notion that when things are really bad, the people here coalesce.
That's right.
And do great things.
That's right. So in 2019, you retired. That's really not the appropriate word because you're not retired at all, but you retired, or at least from the AAMC, and now you're doing work that it feels like maybe kind of is full circle in your career, with a focus on well-being, clinician wellness, well-being, resilience. How did you get to that point? So we were talking before the camera started rolling. I would say, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I would say his favorite hobby is fly fishing. So why is it that you're not out there fly fishing every day? What drives you to continue this work in the well-being, wellness, resilience space, which is desperately needed? But talk to us a little bit about how you got to where you are today.
The reality is, and in the early part of my career, when I really became deeply involved in psychiatric research and psychiatric care, I realized how common problems like depression, anxiety disorders, suicide are. And I also realized how vulnerable within healthcare physicians, nurses, other professionals are to burnout in the workplace. So there were these two large problems that we really didn't talk about, that often we tried to push into the background.
Cover up.
It was the workplace burnout so many people felt, and it was the vulnerability to things like depression and anxiety that so many people experience. These are very, very common problems. And I personally experienced them. As a medical student, that first year, I was very burned out. And it was the first time in my life that I experienced severe anxiety and depression. I had a helpful person in the dean's office who, when I thought I might need to withdraw from medical school, encouraged me to seek help. I sought that help. I felt much better. And I went on, I think I could argue I went on to have a fairly decent career. So I had that lived experience. But I never talked about it at all. I didn't share it with people. I felt that quite honestly, I was succumbing to the stigma. And so I wasn't open.
It's almost viewed as a weakness, and you don't want to expose that weakness.
Exactly. I was presenting a strong facade, and I thought that by sharing this, it would somehow lessen me. In 2015, in New York City, there were 2 residents who died from suicide. And it happens all too often, but in these cases, it became a story in New York City, in the New York Times. And that led to a national focus, and people started to discuss the problem of burnout and of mental health issues for doctors. As I was personally wrestling with this issue for our med students, our faculty, their mental health issues, their well-being issues, I realized there was no platform, no entity discussing it. I approached a friend and colleague who heads the National Academy of Medicine, which is really our national think tank for big issues like this. He agreed that they would take on the issue. He did make a requirement of their taking it on that I co-chair the effort. And since then, I've co-chaired what's called the Action Collaborative on Clinician Wellbeing, run by the National Academy. They did a study on all the causes of burnout and all the stresses that affect mental health and published that. And more recently, they published a national plan for action about how health systems like your own can take this issue on. And the fact is, on the national scene, you've been a real leader. You had established a well-being program with medical center-wide leadership so that you aren't pushing the issue into the shadows, but you're bringing it out of the shadows, promoting the well-being of your students, of your faculty, your residents. I think the last point I'd underscore is that this needs to be something getting attention at the very top level of the medical center. If you had delegated it off to somebody, but you didn't personally feel invested in this topic, it wouldn't be nearly as effective as I think your effort is.
Thank you for that. And while I do think we have done some good things and made some good progress and lots of positive momentum, there is still that feeling that it's not enough, that we haven't found the secret sauce. You know, we've talked a little bit about what is the secret sauce, and you know, what I'm afraid is there is no secret sauce, but there are components, and it's different from one place to another. So it seems to me over the years that we are now talking about things that we didn't talk about years ago, and bringing it kind of out into the light. So many of our students and trainees, and people all across the board in healthcare, nurses, lots of the frontline workers have that shared experiences that at times can be traumatic, you know, that create anxiety, depression, and it's hard to find the balance where you feel like you are well-rounded and you do feel like you can prioritize the well-being and the things that lead to that. So it seems that over the years, while we are now talking about it, which is better than years ago when we weren't, that the pace of things is faster and the intensity is a little bit higher. Certainly the pandemic, I think, accentuated all of that. So while I am pleased that we have made some progress and we have efforts and we are, I think, moving in the right direction, at least for me as a leader, it feels like we're still behind. You know, we're still trying to figure out the best and the right things to do. We're certainly working on it, and we'll continue to, but it just, we're not where we need to be yet here at this medical center, and I think across the country. It's just, it's tough. It's tough. And it's so big, so broad.
You made an important observation, though. COVID brought this out in stark relief. It was the heroic actions of healthcare workers that really came to the fore in those early days of the pandemic. But it was also the toll that the stresses of healthcare in the middle of a global traumatic event, unlike anything we'd seen in our lifetime, those things came together to give this topic even more urgency. And what I hear you expressing is that sense of we have to do more. This is a journey. We may look back and say of all the terrible things that COVID wrought, it made us aware of the fragility of our colleagues who can do all these heroic things, but not without it taking a toll on them and on their families.
That's right.
It just brought that awareness to us all. So we are, I think, in the early stages of how we're going to get to the right place around overall clinician well-being. But this is actually one of those examples where when academic health centers lead the way, they bring the whole healthcare system in the United States with them. You may have heard me talk about this. So the teaching hospitals, like your own, are only 5% of the hospitals in the country, but they deliver 25% of the hospital care in the country.
And when especially that higher acuity.
I was going to say, when you have a newborn, a very low birth weight newborn who needs a neonatal intensive care unit, it's almost always in a center like this. Burn units, cancer centers. I know you're on your journey to become a NCI designated cancer institute. That's what the state of Mississippi needs, and that's what you can deliver in a way no other hospital or health system. They all do great work, but there's certain things that can really be done well by an academic health center. That's why I haven't retired. I just
there's still so much to do.
I'm so excited about the kinds of things that a place like UMMC contributes to its state and beyond.
It is certainly a wonderful opportunity, and sometimes the other side of that coin is a very heavy opportunity. You know, it's two sides of that coin. And you know, on the topic of well-being and resilience, I think another piece of it that is especially challenging is it's very personal, and it means something different to different individuals depending on what your job is, what your social situation and family situation may be like, where you are in your career. You know, what is important to a 25-year-old is probably very different than what's important to a 60-year-old. And along the way, individuals learn different coping mechanisms. They figure themselves out a lot. One of the things that I tell students very often when they ask me about advice is, and this took me a while to figure this out, how important it was, is know yourself well enough to know what recharges you and make time for that. It may not be a lot of time. It may not, it may not be a huge part of your life, but in the effort to balance everything you're doing, don't forget to recharge yourself. And it took me some years to figure that out, or to at least appreciate how valuable that was. But as we, as an organization, try to build a program for well-being and to extend the efforts, advance the efforts of our Office of Well-Being, one of the challenging pieces is something that might work well for one person doesn't work well for the other person. And just having the awareness that there are certainly commonalities, but there are, at some level, it gets to be very personal and individual. And our audience here on an academic medical center campus is a wide range of ages and experiences and maturity level and all of the things. You know, there's no one size fits all. So that adds to the challenge as well.
You know, you posed a question to me when we were talking earlier about, well, what is the secret ingredient that really we need to promote the well-being of all the people on the medical center campus? And I thinking more about that, I think that the secret ingredient is human connection. Being in healthcare can be very isolating at times. You can feel the burden that you carry, caring for patients, or as a learner, trying to master your profession. But it's the connection to other people, especially the coming together, supporting one another, finding shared meaning in the work you do. That's the glue that holds us together. Our Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, is very eloquent about this topic. And he says that in America, we're having an epidemic of loneliness. That despite our media and our
Quick
technical
connectedness,
connectivity, that we're actually becoming disconnected in too many cases. And that's something we need to confront and take on. And for a frontline nurse, for a medical student, you know, just focused on passing their boards, you can begin to become very insular, very isolated. And so one of the best things, and something I've always been drawn to when I visit here, is people care about their relationships. You walk down the hallway and somebody will smile at you who doesn't know you from Adam. And I think promoting you, for you as a leader, and for the well-being programs, for really everything that's happening here, promoting that sense of connectedness in the common purpose is very important.
Helps bring us together.
If anybody happens to be listening to this, I would say, think about the people you feel connected to. You know, that's where you find your well-being.
So as you think about the future, the next 10, 20 years of medicine in this country, and you can go with this whether you're thinking about medicine at large or whether you're thinking about academic medicine, and seeing the things that you've seen, that we've seen over the last 20, 30, 40 years, the way the focus has changed, the way healthcare has changed and education has changed. What are some of the things that you kind of see out there that you think, wow, I'm excited about that. This is gonna be fun. This is gonna be good.
When I think forward, I believe that, and this isn't just in medicine or healthcare, I think it speaks to our larger challenges as a nation. We have widening inequality. You know, certainly in medicine and healthcare, there are haves and there are have-nots. They come together at a place like this, you know, a place where people go for the latest treatment, but also many people come because it's their safety net.
That's right.
When they're ill. And sadly in America, when we should have been trying to bridge that inequality, it's actually widened some. And again, we saw that during COVID. You know, we saw underserved populations have higher death rates than well-served populations in healthcare. And for all of us in healthcare, that should feel like a moral injustice because we take an oath to do no harm, to protect our patients, regardless of where they're coming from. And so I think our biggest shared challenge really is to try and close those gaps. And again, the places that I feel are at the cutting edge of this, that are confronting it daily and trying to find ways to get beyond it, are places like UMMC. Jackson is a wonderful, vibrant city in so many ways, but it struggles as a city. Mississippi, like every state, struggles with inequality. And as a major public academic health center, how you approach that inequality will shape how the entire health system does. That's what excites me. It's daunting. It saddens me at times when I see cases of those people left out of the system, not getting what they need. But I see activities going on, and I've seen them here that are bridging that gap.
I do think that at a place like this, where at any given day we have hundreds of babies in our neonatal intensive care unit, and our transplant team is doing double organ transplants, we also have a large patient population that this is a safety net hospital for.
Yeah.
So it is the broadness of the work that we do here in the missions, I think really does reflect what's going on in the country in so many ways. Before we wrap up, is there something in particular that you had thought, I hope she asked me about this, or I'd really like to make this comment? Is there anything that you would kind of want to put out there that I might not have touched on?
Well, in my own home state, I'm a product of that university system. My father never went to high school, but he knew that if we took advantage of public higher education, my brothers and I, we could have opportunities like I've enjoyed in my life. I have a special place in my heart for a state university and a state academic health center and the things they do. They are in many ways the crown jewel of their public education system. And I hope your fellow citizens in Mississippi take it from somebody who has literally seen it in every state. This is a very special place. It deserves every bit of support it gets from the citizens of this state, from the legislature, because this is where the future happens.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
I compliment you and your leadership group. You're doing a wonderful job. And every time I visit, I see more to be excited about here.
Thank you. And I also want to thank you, as I said earlier, for your leadership at that national level, and for the audience to know that Dr. Kirch is being very gracious as always, but he has championed us for the last decade. He has spoken positively about this medical center and the things happening in Mississippi at different opportunities on a national stage several times over the last decade. So for that ongoing support and recognition, I think, of the work that's being done here, I thank you for that. It has meant a lot over these years that you sort of help stand up for us sometimes when people tend to put Mississippi down just a little bit. So in closing, what I want to say is to all of you that are watching, he talked about the connectedness and the shared sense of purpose. And I think that is one of the things about this medical center that is very special. All of you tuning in to this program have different jobs, all sorts of different roles here at the medical center, but it's that shared purpose and shared vision of what we are doing for the citizens of the state of Mississippi, for our family and our friends and people all across the state that we don't know and may never meet, whether it's training and educating healthcare professionals that will go all over the place to practice, whether it's advancing science and treatment and cures for those diseases that impact our own families the most, or whether it's taking care of patients, extending our reach, and for the many of you that do the behind-the-scenes work to support all of those efforts. It's that shared purpose and that shared vision that's responsible for all of our successes and all of the positive things that we are able to do at this medical center. And for that, I want to say thank you to you. I appreciate your commitment and the work that you are doing for all the people in the state of Mississippi. Thank you.